Wired Axcess.
We'll do it live.
Wired Access.
Do it live.
Wired Access.
We'll do it live.
Wired Axcess.
Welcome to another Wired Axcess podcast. I'm your host, DJ K-Dub Omaha. We're part of the Hurrdat sports production team here. And to my left, I am welcoming Anna Bellinghausen. Welcome to the show. You're one of the major contributions to the Hurrdat media. And I wanted to bring you on because I feel like females in social media is growing so much, and you're a part of that team that, I mean, this started from the bottom, now we're here, right?
Oh,
I mean, you're living in so surreal moments, but how long did you play sports growing up? Let's start back then, because, like, being in the social media for sports, sometimes you have that good sports background that maybe someone doesn't know about yourself. What all did you do when you were growing up? What was your sports experience?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it all started with youth sports for sure, as it does probably with most of us that are in the sports world today, right? So it started playing like softball when I was younger, soccer, track and field was my thing growing up, and basketball was big. Like I was like, I'm going D1 in basketball. That was my thing. Not that tall, didn't really work out that well, but
you don't have to have the height. If you got the grit that you got right now in the social media world, it had to have been something, right?
Something went wrong in my basketball career. I don't know what happened, but yeah, that didn't work out. So once I soon realized that, I ran my first 2 years in college at UNO, so I do have some college experience at the D1 level, which is like awesome when I traded for the world, but honestly, like my sights were always set on sports journalism and wanting to be a reporter. Like that was, I always knew, like from middle school on.
Well, so I'm a guy that, you know, if you're ever listen to Hurrdat media and you see myself, DJ K-Dub Omaha, I'm about all these things that I do, right? But what attracted you early to the sports media side of it? Because it has to be a reality of going, you know, I can only take the sports so far. Yeah. I can only do it so far, but it's also a gut thing, like to know that you went through some feelings that, you know, some people are afraid to talk about, or even to express the fact that I had to go, man, I am at D1, but can I do something else quicker, faster?
Yeah, I mean, those are all really good questions. For sure, your athletic ability will only take you so far, right? And even if I was a world-class track athlete, like, they don't even make that much money, right? It's hard for them to even make livings off of sponsorships and whatnot. Like, it's not a highly paid sport.
So, like, the Olympics wasn't like...
Oh, no. God, no. Oh, my God.
I have to ask.
I'll tell you when my career ended, actually. I know the exact moment. I was lining up at a meet in California, and I looked to my right, and there was a girl in a jersey, much taller, much bigger than me, and it said Brazil with an S on it. She was on, like, the Brazil national team, like, smoked everyone. And after that point, I'm like, wow, I really can't hang with these D1 girls. Like, oh, my goodness. So it was fun while it lasted, and I knew I was never going to be that amazing. I mean, it was...
But you were in the spot. I mean, you were in a race, though, competing at that level. Yeah. So, I mean, you have to take some kind of credit for that part.
For sure.
I understand the realization. So when you start realizing, okay, I'm going to flip that switch, what was your schedule prior where you're trying to do a little bit of obviously the school and the D1 athlete and possibly some social media? Mm-hmm. And how did that schedule adjust to not having to go run track, to not having to go warm up, to not having to go do all those things that D1 athletes sometimes don't realize they have to do on their own, or the want or drive to do it on their own?
Yeah, the scheduling was a big part for me because obviously I was out of town like pretty much every weekend my freshman year because we were at meet after meet. And in track, you have indoor season and outdoor season. So it's not like, oh, I'm just gone through the winter.
It's not the spring, right?
Or just the spring.
For high school.
Exactly. Like I'm practicing from the day we get on campus to basically like May 20th or so. So even after finals, like finals are done, we're still at our conference track meet. So like it's a grind. Like you're through the whole year. So when people make this whole
noise about basketball's going year round, football's going year round with 7-on-7, you're like, yeah, we've been here. Yeah, we done that.
I mean, it's even worse for cross country runners too. Like I was a sprinter, but if you're on the cross country side, you're training into the summer. Like you have no off season. Your off season's probably 2 weeks after the track conference meet, and then you get a little bit of off time, and then you start cross country season essentially, which is basically the summer.
Did you run that in high school? What's
Oh,
going
no.
on? Okay.
No cross country
You did the
running for me.
volleyball, right, at school?
No
or-
volleyball. I did basketball.
Okay.
But I was never a long distance gal ever.
See, my thing, I have 4 kids. They're all, my last one's a senior in high school. They're all out of high school except for the last one. And in 7th and 8th grade, I always found it interesting to let them try one thing different because they were all sports. They were soccer, basketball, volleyball, football. So I said, but at school, I want you to try something you don't do normally. And my second to youngest daughter was like, my youngest daughter was like, yeah, I'm not trying track, Dad. I'm not trying. Ends up being a leader for track and loves it and turned it into something, but she gave up soccer for it. So like when you see these kids transition like just through the years and you go, man, like imagine that you had all these sports and now you're starting to dwindle it out. When you got to those decisions out of high school, what took you to that thought of I want to do track, and what really blew track out of the water for yourself?
Well, it's funny because I didn't even run my freshman year of high school. Like it wasn't even a thought. I was like, I don't want to run all the time, right? Like who wants to do that? Like no one in their right mind wants to just
Can I say
run
some
all the
people, the
time.
common saying is if you're running, is someone chasing you? Like
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
looking,
Like,
right?
Everyone that does track or cross country's got they're wired different. They're
Yes,
literally wired differently
yes.
because you got to have a different mentality of that. It's like, it's such a mental game with yourself and like how you can put yourself through all those workouts. I mean, you're literally pushing your body to its extreme limits
and to exhaustion in most
to
points,
exhaustion.
right?
Oh yeah, like that's how you get better, right? Like that's how you push your threshold. So like, I didn't really realize I was that fast until my sophomore, junior year of high school, and I was blowing everyone away at the JV meets, and I was like, this is way too easy. Like I need to be on varsity. Like this is not even fun. And then our coach moved me up to varsity my junior year. And then that's when I just started to take off and really realized that I was like, okay, I'm kind of good at this. And then I just had a goal in mind that I was like, I wanna run D1 or I'm not gonna do it, kind of thing. Like I'm either gonna go big or go home, right? I'm either gonna go D1. I'm not gonna take a D2 school or NAI. There was like some like Dakota State was calling me, like visiting me and stuff. But I'm like, I want to go D1.
Did you go to high school locally?
Yeah, Elkhorn South.
Elkhorn South.
Good old Elkhorn South.
So were you there when it first started? Like,
no. So I was there. I graduated in 2018. So
Okay.
there was a few classes before me.
about four.
About four
classes
classes before.
So obviously the track hasn't developed to where they are as they're growing. And then, so what support did you feel that you got from family and friends when it came to track? Was there anybody that knew track enough to get you to over that hump?
Honestly, not family-wise, really. It was probably my coaches, I would say, that like really taught me how track worked and how to get better. And
Because I think like in middle school, it's just like go run, go
right.
do. They
It
might
wasn't
teach
much
you one
structure,
thing.
right?
Yeah.
Like, and my friends weren't super serious about it. Like there wasn't anybody that was trying to go D1 except for the guys. So some guys on the team, like I ran with Alex Nelson, who was a decorated runner at Nebraska. So was his younger brother and older brother. So there was like guys on the team that I could definitely ask questions to that were more serious and had it in their family. But I don't even know if my dad might have ran track in high school or something, but he was a big football guy. Like me and him talk football like no other, but I couldn't play that, unfortunately. I would have loved to, but no. So no like family members come to mind, but definitely coaches. There's those coaches, I think, at Elkhorn South. I mean, Peter Cosme and Mrs. Kasner down there. She's not there anymore. I think she's over at Scott now, but Cosme down there, like he really was the one that pushed me to.
Well, and I like that you said
do that.
Other guys push you, because obviously if you roll that into the social media world, you're up against how did that help you grow yourself to be able to be amongst what some would call, not anymore, but the men's media, or how does that feel, and how were you able to translate that and be able to go, okay, now I'm going to take a little bit from him, but you're going to see the Anna version come out and it's going to blow some people out of the water.
For sure. I mean, I could go back to just like my younger days. I was always playing with the boys, like always playing football with them at recess, soccer. I had some great family friends growing up. They're twin brothers, and so we would just beat each other up all the time. Basically, it's like they did not treat me like a girl. Like they were not like, oh, go easy on her. Like no, it was full fledged. We are on the same level. And that I honestly credit to wanting to be an athlete and just like having that tougher skin, because you're dealing with boys that just like don't care, right?
Well, and it reminds me, you know, of course I'm an older guy, but it reminds me of just that commercial, like the Nike commercial. If they can do it, I could do it better.
Yep.
If they could do it, I could do it better.
And that was like me every day. I'm like, I'm gonna prove you wrong. I'm gonna beat all the boys at this and that, and just like that was my thing.
All right. So you could do your own Nike commercial. So when you think of the social media or even in the sports media, what took your role there, and what made you even go that way? What was your there inspirational anchoress? Was there someone that made you go, I want that job?
Yeah, I always say this, but Samantha Ponder on College Game Day was the first person I really looked up to. Like, I just remember watching her on Saturday mornings and seeing her and saying, if she can do it, I can do it kind of thing. Like, my biggest motto is, if you can see it, you can be it. And that's just representation across the board, right? Like, you want your kids to see a role model for them when they're growing up, because sometimes, like, I mean, maybe even for you growing up, you didn't see people in your profession that you could look up to. And like I felt that for sure growing up as a woman in sports and wanting to be one at least. But once I saw Samantha Ponder, I was like, okay, like this is a thing. This is a possible outcome for me.
It's another way to get in there. How was the parent support? What was their thoughts? Because if you think of sometimes when you think of anchors and stuff like that, money isn't always up there where everybody thinks it. Everybody thinks, oh, if you're on TV or if you've done this, you got all this money. No. You had to grind to get each additional dollar that you got. So what was your parents' thought on that? Was that any talk from your parents?
I mean, my parents are so supportive. Like, they never questioned anything I ever wanted to do. They were always, the ones driving me to practice. Especially my dad was always like, can I be the third base coach on the softball team? Like, he was always super supportive of that. They didn't really question any of my decisions. I think they knew that I was special in the fact that if I wanted something, I was going to go get it. And I don't think they've ever doubted that I would get to my goals. I'm still not at the goals that I have for myself, right, in like 5 to 10 years, but they've always been confident in me. I've never felt them like waver in support of like, oh, you shouldn't do that. It might not make any money. But the industry that we're in, I mean, it's passion, right? It's you do this because you love it. And like, that's all I need. And they know that if I'm happy, it doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter, right? It's just all about if you can just have a happy life and enjoy the work you do. I think that's all that really matters. And that's all they honestly care about.
See, and that's like when people go, man, Kendall, you got all these jobs. I'm like, I don't consider any of them a job. Right. I don't look at them as that aspect, because I think when you do, you kind of discredit what you do and you discredit the time that you're putting in, because it is a lot of hours. It is a lot of editing. It is a lot of time where sometimes you just got to sit down by yourself and be able to buckle down. But of course, not everybody understands that aspect of it. How's that been with social life, with just friends, family? Yeah. How's that understanding been? And what's some things that you're like, man, I love what I do, but I have missed a few activities with the family or with friends? For
sure. I mean, if you work in sports, you're working nights, you're working holidays. And I always say, like, I know I made it big when I'm working Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? Because those are the biggest games in sports. And, like, that's where I want to be at one point. And your family, I mean, definitely has to be understanding if you're in this business. And my family is. Like, they know my schedule. They know that I make time when I can. And they get that I have a lot of obligations. But yeah, there was things throughout college that I wish I could have done, those silly things like formals or just social hangouts, parties, stuff like that. Like there's little things that you're like, oh, I wish I could have done that. But I was used to missing things already. Like I already had been a student athlete. Like I knew, I understood time management so well that like I knew how to manage my classes to my work schedule or my workout schedule and kind of balance that with social life. Like I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to have a life outside of what you do. like talk about the things that you like beyond sports, have friends that have different interests than you. And like I definitely do, like not all of my friends at home are like super into sports, like they could care less, right? But I love that because it gives me a different vantage point on life rather than always being wrapped up in sports. And it is a big part of my life, but it can't only define you. And like that's the biggest thing that I've been working on is like, okay, who am I? Like how can I define myself other than like, oh, I'm a sports reporter?
Well, as you define yourself, what would you say your biggest thing that you try to do for your downtime? What's your time waster? What's the thing that can help you, you know, whether it is going fishing, what's something that you really drive to try to do a little bit more every year? Yeah,
no, it's definitely music. And like I grew up playing the guitar, not very good now, so don't ask me to play anything. I'm glad there's not a guitar in here. But like simple things like that. I love music. Every Friday, like I'm on New Music Friday on Spotify. Like I go through the whole list. Any albums that drop, a big Drake fan. So like just keeping up with that I think is fun. Obviously hanging out with friends. I love traveling. My friends love traveling, so like every few months or so we get together and like, all right, what city should we go visit? Whether that's like Chicago or Phoenix or something like that. We're pretty good about
So where's your favorite travel place you've been so far?
Ooh, favorite travel place? Honestly, kind of random, but Treasure Island in Florida.
Okay.
It's like this really cute beach, and it's just like this little town with dive bars, and then they have like beachside bars and stuff like that. It's just like super cool. It's like its little own community.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
I've been down to the Keys. I'm not a fish person. I'm not one that eats seafood. I'll eat shrimp. I'll eat stuff like that. But my now future son-in-law, gosh, that's so hard to say, but he was with us. He ordered some mahi shrimp or mahi tacos, and I tried it. Wow, like when you are on that coast, like get involved in whatever. At least let whatever the chef is trying to serve you, try it. There's a reason. They know the flavors, they know the taste.
For sure.
So I really, it's funny that you say Florida because that's one of our favorite places. We like to. I think the coolest thing about down there is you can go in the morning on the East Coast, see the sunrise. You can make it a whole day and end up on the West Coast of Florida and still see the sunset. Yeah, so it's like seeing those moments, and we like it in that panhandle. So of course, with traveling, with doing everything, I like seeing that Hurrdat Sports is getting out to the events. So far, what's been your favorite national event that you've been able to cover? And share a little bit of who you are and show the production way.
Oh, man. Honestly, my favorite one is right here in Omaha. It's the College World Series. That's just been an event close to my heart because I grew up going, and then I went as a fan, and now I get to go as a member of the media and as a professional. Like I went as a student. That's where I really started my career in sports reporting, was at the College World Series as a sophomore, not knowing a single thing about what I was doing, right? And then now looking back and just saying like, oh my gosh, like I've kind of made it somewhere, right? And I've got my name out there and established something. So I would say the College World Series, and that is a grind. I mean, it is every single day for 10 days, mornings, nights. Like you're there till midnight editing things, and you're there early in the mornings. I mean, it could be,
but it's the quickest 2 weeks that you'll ever think of.
Yeah, like it definitely goes by fast, and like you look at the dates and you're like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be the longest 10 days, right? Just like you said, but it goes by fast, and you're like, I miss it already. Like I'm like, let's go back. Like let's go.
Well, and the events just keep coming. Obviously, now Omaha's going to have like the Supernovas. Yeah. Union Omaha's doing good. Like there's so much good sports going around. But sometimes it's the coverage or knowledge that these events are that much is not always out there. How do you feel like you at Hurrdat is able to make sure any event that you're there, the community knows it's happening? Yeah, that's like our biggest thing for sure. We want to give a voice to everybody throughout Omaha and Nebraska in general. So we try to cover events that maybe people aren't covering. One of our great partners, Omaha, where I went to school, UNO, we work with them a ton in their sports because we kind of saw a lack of it throughout the Omaha community. I mean, there's usually
a small little blurb about them in the paper, but like that's not enough. Like these student athletes are working their butts off to do what they do, and they provide an entertaining game for us to watch, so they deserve the credit as well. So going out to UNO games has been something we've really tried to implement, and we have also high school football, getting that more love on social media. I know everyone, you go out to a lot of games too. Like people love that stuff, right? And there's just such a need for that digital component.
See, and that's what I keep sharing with people, because they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, these kids just need one person to see what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
You can have all the huddle you want, you can have all that, but right now coaches, even athletes, they need it now.
Yeah.
And they're looking now. And that's my whole thing. I mean, it hits a little harder when these are some kids that I used to coach, whether it's in football, basketball, baseball, and you see them switch to football and they've never played football, but you see them having success, but of course they don't have the name ahead of them. And then you see them outside and you're like able to get people's eyes on it. It's just crazy the amount of influence that we can help for them. And I think sometimes it goes ungranted for those players because they're overlooked, because it's all about who can put out the most or who has the most follows. But I tell you, when you could get a kid's video seen 5,000-6,000 times, you never know when one coach sees that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And that's what I like about the high school football, and I really like that everybody's pushing. Obviously, then we go to basketball. Volleyball, I would like to obviously do a little better. My schedule just hasn't worked that way, but obviously even those kids need it.
Oh, yeah.
When you look back at UNO, obviously I think one of the things that people always wonder, what did you learn in schooling that has helped you to be who you are today? And what is something that you wish a school or a college could do better to help future sports sports media people?
Yeah, I mean, what I learned in the classroom was definitely the basis. I mean, it's AP style. It's learning how to write. It's learning how to write scripts, right, for TV, and then obviously on the print side too. So definitely got my basis understanding between high school and college of what are the expectations for a journalist. Also learning just the ethics behind journalism, and even the law side of it too. Like we had to take a law course just of different things that you need to be careful of in journalism. Obviously, there's ways you can get in trouble as a journalist too, and saying false things about somebody. So kind of understanding that side of it too was really cool that UNO made you take that course just so you can understand that half of it too. But I think the biggest thing that colleges need to do is just give kids opportunities and give them to them often and early. Hear that line in sports a lot. Like you want to score early and often, right?
Yeah.
Well, you want to do that in college too for reps, right? And you want to learn how to be a better broadcaster, but the only way you can do that is trying and is getting those reps. So it's, yes, I learn a lot in school, but there's nothing like throwing yourself in a broadcast. Obviously, you want to be prepared, you want to be researched well, but also there's nothing like being put in live situations, sitting on a studio desk and your producer tells you have 2 minutes to fill about a hockey game, and you're not the biggest hockey fan, you don't know a lot, but you have to talk about what's going on, right? So it's those experiences that are key. I think UNO did a great job of giving those opportunities plentiful. I mean, there were so many games for us to cover, and they were always willing to let the younger freshmen or sophomores on.
Have trouble finding people to cover them sometimes?
I mean, yeah, there's been like times where they're like, hey, who can call this game? And no one's available, right? And we don't even get to call it because there's so many games and not enough students. So like the biggest thing there is they just need more students interested. And I think there are, but I don't think they've found like Mav Radio, which is our student station there, or they just haven't had the confidence enough to say, okay, I'm going to go do it. But like, my biggest message to anybody that wants to get into this is try now and don't wait, because you want to be as experienced as you can out of college.
See, and of course, anytime that I have someone on the show, they're always like, what are you going to talk about? What are we going to do? Do you like just impromptu conversation like we're doing? Or do you also like to be very scripted on at least the questions of what do you feel more comfortable with? And because sometimes it looks like there's some free hand going, and you kind of have to have that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be on your feet, especially sometimes when you're talking to athletes and they give you a one-word answer, right? And you just have to like come back with something, and like you have to be willing to not stick to your script, and that's something I've learned. I mean, I think back to when I was starting out as a reporter. You don't really listen as much as I do now because I'm more comfortable in what I do, and I can work a crowd better than I could previously. So I think it's just more confidence and more reps is when you can really find your way around conversations and say, like, okay, I want to be a little bit more, like, I'm going to be different about this conversation than what I had planned, right? So, like, you can pivot a lot easier, I think, as you get more experience. But at first, I mean, like, I got my questions. I got 3 or 4 questions. Like, I'm not changing them no matter what, right? But, like, there's a buzzer beater at the end of the game or a late foul or something, and the game completely changes. You got to throw those away and write new ones. Like, sports is never going to be perfect in what you want. Like, your ideal world will probably never happen in the questions you want to ask, just because things do change. There's plays that get made. There's injuries that happen. There's coaching changes. There's so many things that can happen. So, I mean, I would rather do, I would say, like, be well versed in your knowledge of what you need to talk about, but I think it's better to be unscripted and let conversations flow for sure. But always have a backup
Always
plan.
have a backup
Don't just
plan.
go in there being like, all right, I don't know who you are, but we're gonna talk to you today. You know, like, you have to have
What was
sort of.
what was your name?
Exactly. Like, you got to know
I think
something.
my biggest thing is no matter what I'm doing, because I DJ as well, so I do a lot of weddings. Sports DJing has been my biggest thing between football, volleyball, basketball. But I always just overthink the names, and I don't know what it is. No matter even if it's something that I've said over and over and over, and is there anything that you do to help yourself? Because obviously you're live at these sporting events, so names have to roll off. What's one thing that you think you do when it comes to names, and how do you prepare yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of practice, and what I'll do is either talk to their sports information director beforehand and get them to pronounce it to me like 5 times. I'll put it in my voice memos and repeat it and like play it for myself before I go on, or I'll write out how I think it should sound, just phonetically in my notes, and so I can have it there. But once you hear it on the broadcast a few times, it's a lot easier. Like, if you're hearing a name for the first time, it's a lot harder. But if you hear other people say it, you're like, oh yeah. Like, think of the names that you grew up with. Like, there's probably some tough last names that you grew up with, but you just know them so well because they're like household names in your community or whatever.
Well, I mean, I dispatch live flight helicopters for all across the United States with my part-time job. And so, like, the counties will call and they'll be like, Schoharie. But if you look at it, you're thinking something way out.
Yep.
And it's always funny just training someone new because they're like, what did they just say? I'm like, you just hit NYSCH and you'll find it. I promise you. But you don't have to repeat it right now.
Yeah.
But then I have people that will make me repeat it for a reason, whether I mess it up or say it wrong. And I'm like, come on, man. You know I'm not saying it right. I don't need to be put on the spotlight.
That's funny.
So when it comes to all the sports that you do, is there a sport that you just want to go full all out if you could? I only ask because college baseball is a great event, but it's so short-lived. Is there a sport that really has your heart that you want to go for?
Yeah, I mean, football for sure has my heart. I mean, just growing up, throwing the pigskin in the backyard with my dad, like, is as funny as that sounds, but like that's where my love for sports started, was football. I hope my career ends there, right? Like, NFL Sundays is like my ultimate goal, right? I want to be on the top game. That's the ultimate. But beyond that, I mean, I say my favorite sport is whatever's in season. I mean, it's basketball. It's going to be basketball soon. Right now it's volleyball. Like, it's just tough for me to pick, and I don't ever want to like pigeonhole myself into one sport or another. I think that's silly because that's kind of missed opportunities, and what I'm doing, it's such a grind that, like, if someone needs me to fill in on a lacrosse game, I'm going to say yes, right? It's like I just have to be well versed in all the sports, so it's hard for me to pick one I'd choose my career in. Besides, I want to end up in football for sure.
See, and it's funny that you brought up the whole multi-sport, because like Kevin Kugler just comes to mind, and like I'm never afraid to say it. That's where I started my whole really getting into the AM radio, was with the Schick and Nick show, and obviously they're part of Hurrdat. So like when you see those surreal moments and you think of Is there one female that is in multiple sports, or are they pretty much locked down into one unless they're on Sports Center, like Maine?
I mean, if you think about the top ones, it's like Erin Andrews, who's obviously NFL, and then you think about Jenny Taft, who does a lot of college football. She also does soccer. She does a World Cup for Fox and does a few other things for them too.
I think World Cup that would be
like World Cup.
And it's coming to the U.S., so Hurrdat Sports. I don't know if you know, but we could be out at some of these games.
Oh yeah, for sure. We'll find a way in there. But
that's right.
Chris Budden is a really good example. She's on ESPN. She does college baseball, basketball, football, like the whole 9 yards, everything for ESPN. But I mean, there are definitely females in the industry that do everything. On the play-by-play side, not even reporting, but Lisa Byington comes to mind. She was just on the Iowa football game. She does Milwaukee Bucks, and then she'll do March Madness. I think she does some baseball too. So like she's everywhere. And Holly Rose, another one. I should have mentioned her first. I mean, she does literally everything under the sun.
See, and it's good to see, obviously, the people that are growing the brand and growing. Where do you feel the peak is, and how long do you think it might take you to get to something there?
Yeah, I mean,
know you said Sundays and Thanksgiving and Christmas, but what do you think it takes? Is there? You got your 5-year plan, you said. What's a goal plan?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully by 30, 35, I'm kind of where I really, really want to be, which would be the NFL. But careers are just so up and down that I don't want to place like a timestamp on anything, right? You don't want to say I can't reach a goal till I'm 30, because who knows? Maybe I'll reach it when I'm 25, right? Like you just don't know.
Sure.
So
all it takes is one, right?
Exactly. Like it just takes one person to believe in you, and you never know what could happen. So I don't like to put time on it necessarily, but I mean, there's definitely long-term goals or short-term goals, and that's just getting more national TV. I've been on national TV one time, and I want to do that multiple times throughout the year. I want it to not just be a one-time thing, right? You want to get that consistent gig work, and those are the things that like a Kevin Kugler does, and he has built up such a resume that like that's his job, right? It's working these freelance gigs, and he can obviously make a living off of it, do what he needs to do, and like get to travel and go to all these places, and that's like a great model to look to. And I've talked to Kevin about that, and just like how he's worked his way up and grinded through the ranks. I mean, he started here in Omaha on radio, so it's like it's crazy to see it, but it's also like, okay, it's possible for me.
Well, and when you think of that, traveling, could you see yourself being a hotel, motel person?
I mean, honestly, I do that now because of work, and I'm going out to a lot of different events, or I'm traveling with friends other places. And I mean, go back to the days I'm a student athlete, I'm in a different hotel every week in a different city. So it's not something I'm unfamiliar with. Definitely, I'm fine with it. It's not the best thing in the world to have to pack your life up every weekend, but like if I was doing a job like that, I wouldn't be mad about it.
Was there any other career that you could think of growing up that you really wanted to be if you could have been?
Honestly, no. It was sports journalism or bust for me, honestly.
Because Andrew Rogers, I mean, he goes back to like when he was 8. I interviewed him, and he was like talking about his mom made his own Halloween costumes.
He's got a good picture of that.
And so then I just had to ask if there was anything growing up that you knew.
Well, I guess I wanted to be like a famous singer and guitarist when I was like 10, but that's about it. That didn't go too far, but.
Dang, no guitar, no singing.
we did the lessons, we did the thing for a couple years, but beyond that, I mean, no, didn't go too far.
All right, so what's coming up for you? What's the next thing that you're looking forward to, and how can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. I'll actually be in Milwaukee at the Prep Baseball Report All-Star Game, so awesome getting high school coverage just for baseball across the nation, because it is ridiculous talent level. I mean, they got Cale Fountain from here in Nebraska going out there for it. So these kids are going to be MLB All-Stars very soon. That level of talent's crazy. I'm excited to cover that. And then just Husker sports, Creighton sports. Really excited for this upcoming Creighton basketball season between men's and women's. And then obviously Omaha too, my alma mater. I love to go out to hockey games, volleyball, basketball, anything I can get out to. Fall's here, honestly. It's crazy time right now because all the sports are happening, but it definitely doesn't slow down, because then then there's winter, and then you get into March Madness, which is another one of my favorite things. So yeah, I mean, there's so much up and coming. You can find it all at Hurrdat Sports, and then you can find me at Annabelle Media on Twitter. So yeah, that's kind of where everything is located for what we're up to, where we're gonna be. Plenty
Milwaukee
of coverage
should
there.
be fun. Is it indoors up there? Or?
Yeah, the stadium is indoors. It's the Milwaukee Brewers Stadium. So I
Okay.
think they have a roof, but
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it was a
think they have a
retractable roof. Okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I interviewed Kyle and his brother and his dad back when I was first starting the podcast, and it was at the Wired Training Center. And just to see what Kyle's went through coaching-wise, and you're getting to go watch these kids play at this ultimate level. And I only bring it up because I interviewed Connor Capisci as well, and we had him on the show where he talked about 10th grade. He went to this big event, so many coaches, and they were talking to every kid, but he didn't get one, not one.
yeah.
Ends up looking in the mirror, says, I have to make myself physically better than who I am. Comes back senior year this year when we interviewed him. He's freaking playing for Creighton. And when he came for his interview, he was actually waiting for the White Sox to possibly offer him.
Wow.
So, like, to see these, like you said, baseball coverage in this local area, I know we don't get to play it as much as the coast and the South and all that, but these kids have talent and they have opportunity just by getting under the right eye. So it's awesome to hear that you're going to go see Kyle Fountain out there and hopefully some other local Iowa, Nebraska players. But once again, this is a Wired Axcess podcast, part of the Hurrdat Sports Production. I'm DJ K-Dub Omaha, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.